Hi, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to today's Community Campfire. Here's a little introduction for our dialogue today. We are in a liminal space between stories. The old homogeneous narrative is dying, and a new one is painfully being born. This new one is an amalgamation of many diverse narratives coming together, interweaving to form the foundation of a new civilizational order. Without a global revolution in the sphere of human consciousness, nothing will change for the better. And the catastrophe toward which the world is headed, whether it be ecological, social, demographic, or a general breakdown of civilization, will be unavoidable, wrote Václav Havel many years ago. This emerging narrative is a sign of this revolution in human consciousness, arising from many corners of the planet. It is laying the foundations for reimagining our organizations and their purpose, for rejuvenating our communities and reinventing our societies with courage and compassion. So, welcome to today's dialogue with Gary, Tony, and myself. Thank you.
What a beautiful introduction, as always. Thank you so much, Sahana. Hello, everybody. Just before we bring Tony on, a reminder, please do check out Sahana's link tree, which you can see on the bottom of the page there. I'm so grateful you're joining us. Like, Tony is one of my, I'm a fanboy of Tony. If anybody doesn't know this, you need to be following Toni McLelland's work after today. And also, please do follow Sahana's. But if in the meantime, you want to find out a bit more about me as well, you can go to bit.ly/Gary Turner. So let's bring our super incredible guest, the Toni McLelland. Hello, Tony.
Hi. Thank you
Hi.
for having me. Thank you, Sahana and Gary.
Oh, well, welcome, Tony. Thanks so much. And as I said, I'm curious as we get going how that introduction landed with you in your mind and heart as we get going, Tony.
You know, I'm warming up by the campfire. I'm rubbing my hands and getting warm. So let's get cozy for 30 minutes or so. So, really, really a pleasure to be here and share some of the work that I'm doing with you and your listeners. And I'm a fan of you as well, Gary, and the work that you're doing, as well as Sahana. So I'm encouraging people to follow you too. So great to be here.
Lovely. Well, look, as we get going, of course, the topic today is a really important one. And it's an important one for me as someone that's done a lot of work myself internally and in the workplace around the topic of vulnerability. I see personally there's quite a close link around these new narratives, Shana. But, think about the old narrative is, don't be weak, don't be vulnerable, don't talk about love and connection in the workplace. Those are the dominant narratives that are starting to die away. So I'd love for us as we get going to maybe just do a quick round of check-ins, starting with Tony, then Sahana, then back to myself, just in terms of what's popping up for you in this moment when we think about future-proofing business through compassion. What does it mean to you in your context? Just a very short round, and I'd love to hear a bit more specifically about the work you're doing, Tony. Thanks.
Thank you. Do you want me to go first?
Yeah, let's go to Tony, then Sahana, then myself. Thanks.
Okay, well, I don't know. You kind of sprung this one on me a little bit, Gary, but I'm going to use the word connectedness. Because I actually feel like everything is connected. Everybody's connected in one way or another. And the last few years have kind of proved that. And, whether it be supply chains, natural, the universe, different parts of the globe, everybody is connected, whether we believe it or not. And one action by one individual can have an implication across the globe. So really, it's about connectedness. Considering the impact. Think about the impact of one little action and the ripples. So that's kind of where I'm going to leave it, if that's okay.
I totally second what Tony is saying. It's about connectedness, our interconnectedness, our indelible, absolutely undeniable interconnectedness that, of course, COVID held up a mirror to. And if we hadn't recognized it earlier, the Buddhist philosophy has a word for it. They call it interbeing. You can literally see the cloud in a piece of paper. And if we were to imagine our organizations from that viewpoint of interconnectedness. And like Toni said, a single small action from each one of us, no matter how tiny it may seem to me or to you, actually has a ripple effect far beyond our imagination.
Absolutely.
It's like these tiny starlings, which make their own movements. But what you see from afar is this beautiful pattern that they form in the sky. So it's similarly, our interconnectedness is so deep and profound, not only with each other, but with our planet, with all sentient beings, that
Mm,
recognize that in the forms of our organizations, we would stop and recognize that our organizations are not machines, but very, very living systems and communities that are to be stewarded with compassion and nurtured. So thank you, Toni. Yeah, I totally, totally second what you're saying.
mm.
Just to prove how connected everything is, Winnie reacted with a little bark as you were just sharing
Yes,
that. So
There
yes.
you go.
We hear you,
literally,
Winnie. We totally hear
literally,
you.
literally,
Yes.
she just did, and it's so fascinating because for me, when I look through this lens, what I'm bringing into this space today, this dialogue around future-proofing business with compassion, is there is such a disconnect between the head and heart in the workplace.
Mm,
As Eleanor shared with us on the previous exploration, Shahana, it's literally as if we have been conditioned to cut everything off below the neck in favor of keeping us in a very much that machine metaphor. Don't feel, don't challenge, don't speak up, do as you're told, then everything will be okay. You'll get paid at the end of the month. And I think what we're remembering, and I love that word, Toni and Shahana, we're remembering we've got this infinite agency and we don't actually have to buy into that story anymore. We can actually, with love and care and compassion, challenge it. We don't have to just keep going, yes, noddy dog. That job that you have probably won't actually be lost at the end of the month if you speak up and challenge. I know it's a big fear, but the likelihood is it probably won't actually happen. So,
mm.
so let's just get into the mix around, Toni, what are you seeing right now in your work around compassionate leadership? And what is the readiness through the work you're doing to really dive into this now?
Well, as you were speaking, I was just kind of thinking about, creating a new narrative, because the old narrative is out and it's a plain piece of paper. So we can just create our own narrative and move forward from there and change it if we need to, because the last few years have taught us that change is upon us. Things are always evolving and we need to be thinking, working individually and as organizations in a more compassionate way, and a more agile approach is needed. So really for me, when I'm thinking about compassion, and part of the reason why I started thinking about compassion, if I can just say, was that when I looked at my work over the last 30 years, compassion was the common thread that came through all of it. When I was in criminal justice and working, operationally with young offenders, young people in the criminal justice system, it was compassion that kept me safe. Compassion when working with these hardened people in the criminal justice system. When I was working, in critical incidents, whether it be riots or, Grenfell or, whatever that incident may be, I'm talking about specifically in the UK and in London, it was compassion that brought calm. Compassion was another, the common denominator there. And when I've led organizations as well, I found that compassion is what propelled the organization. It helped productivity and effectiveness with the staff and it boosted morale. So for me, that was the common denominator. So it made sense that I start looking closer through, through the lens of compassion and what does it mean and how it's at the heart. So in a way, I've been kind of doing my own informal research over the last few years, and I use and show people how to use compassion to unlock change, for it to be a catalyst to change, whether it be on an individual basis or an organization. So that was the common denominator for me.
I love that. And just just to add to that, and I'm actually going back to one of Tony's sessions that I was listening to a couple of days back. In that, she speaks about curiosity, and curiosity not only from what I loved about that was not only keeping an open mind, but actively not assuming, not making assumptions and presumptions. Actively think, actively taking those, being conscious when we are making assumptions and presumptions, not only just keeping an open mind. And that stayed so powerfully with me. And Tony, in that you ended with power. So, to couple with that, I'm going back to what you said there because it so resonated with me. That power in the past, in the old narrative, was seen as a kind of a strong man tactic. You had power, you controlled, you commanded, you did what you had to. But power, the way Tony explained and the way I perceive it, is the agency, is the sovereignty, the autonomy and the creativity that each one of us have to approach our work and support each other in holding space for what is wanting to come through each one of us. So that power is very different from the old version of power, power over versus power with and power between, and the power that emanates from communities and networks and not from individuals. Thank you.
I've got to share very quickly. There's something I've got. Here we go again. I knew this would happen with you too. My whole body's just like firing up with like energy. I just want to bring this to life really practically, super quickly. I've been involved in setting up neighborhood watch schemes in my local area, something I've never done before. We've gone from 0 existing 9 weeks ago to over 150 active local community members. Right? But the only reason I'm sharing it is nobody's paid us. Nobody asked us to do it. We just did it. Imagine if you did that in your workplace, if you're watching this live or watching it back. What would it take for you to have a conversation with someone in the department that you don't normally speak with, or explore what better could look like within your context? Yeah, go for lunch with them. Like these really small little wins could unlock so much, Tony. And I just wanted to share that because I never realized quite how much it was possible, to be honest, from the grassroots up. I really, really didn't.
Well, I'm you know me already, Gary, and we talk frequently, and I absolutely love the fact that you've gone in and taken action with this neighborhood watch. As somebody that I chaired my residents association, and I kind of done something similar a few years back. So for me, and I think that the essence of that has kind of got lost, but it really does bring the community together. And together, the community is really, really powerful. And, because I'm currently doing some work with the Metropolitan Police at the moment. And, we in a recent conversation, they said to me, well, what do you think is the answer? And I firmly believe that the answers are in the community. The answers are in the community. And so I commend you, Gary, for the work that you're doing there. And hats off to you. So it's good. And if I can also just add as well, Sahana, just picking up on the power piece, so I just realized that I know this is your show, Gary, and I'm just
we know you're a pro, Tony.
We
know Tony's a pro. We know that. Come on, keep going.
So I was just going to say, Sahana, that you talked about power. And I do remember when I was speaking about that. And I think that some people do actually misuse it. And I actually feel that what we really want is people to kind of get the concept that power is useless unless you know how to use it effectively. And I just say that the way to become more powerful is to use your power to empower others. So you give it to others, empower them, because it actually comes back. People don't need to be fearful of, I need to give, not giving this away and clutching onto it for dear life. It doesn't work like that. And, the more you give away, the more you empower others, the more the impact and the more they bring it back to you. And it goes, and it means that you can empower more people. So it's such an important piece that, I'm a champion of that. So thank you for raising that, Sahana. And Yeah, it's really important what you just said there. Over to you, Gary.
Don't pass it back to me. I don't know what's going on. No, I think it's so beautiful, because I think there's a very, and again, if we look at the narratives, to come back to that point, right, there's a very corrupted view of power at its base level, right? Because like you say, it's very much used, as both of you said, as a tool to oppress and dominate and control, rather than how can we unleash our creativity, our artistry, our connectedness, as you said at the beginning. Like, how can we use the power of connection to truly drive change societally, environmentally, politically, in the workplace? And I think this is my curious bit about this, Toni, and I really would love to weave this into the discussion with you and Sahana, is I'm of the firm belief, because I'm seeing it in the middle of the chemicals industry right now, one of the most extractive on the planet. Those with power and control right now are terrified. They know what's coming. I don't even think they want to be the way they are in the system, but they just do not know how not to be. And they've got so much self-worth wrapped up in the job, the money it brings, the perceived comfort, that they don't know where to even look or start, even though they know what's coming. And I'm really curious what ideas you might have around what's the invitation, and is it curiosity? Is it something else? Thanks.
Yeah, I think it comes full circle to what Sahana said earlier on about curiosity, because, you know, and you mentioned about vulnerability as well. You know, with ego, you don't want to be vulnerable. You know, as leaders, we you know, and I've been a leader myself, and I've thought, oh my gosh, I need to know the answers. But the truth is, you don't. What you need to do is you need to say, well, I don't know the answer, but as soon as I do, I will let you know. You know, and based on the relationship that you have with those people will depend on how much they trust you as a leader. But trust, curiosity, and vulnerability, the vulnerability to say, Gary, Sahana, I don't know. Can you help me? You know, that's the piece. And I think that people, you know, leaders specifically, feel that they're weak, you know, by asking for help or saying that they don't know. But we can't know everything. And I've got a saying that is the people that feel that they know everything are the ones with the most learning to do.
Yep. And I think, thank you, Toni, that so ties back to the old paradigms of leaders who have to know everything, who have to be in charge, who must be in control, who cannot be vulnerable, who needs to be this, you know, literally this strong, ruthless, competitive, and whatever else. So it's so much of a construct, and people have stepped into that construct in such a way, and they've donned that, you know, like that mantle of leadership in that garb of that construct, that they've really forgotten who they are as human beings, that each one of us are human beings first. And going back to what Toni said earlier, that we are part of communities. So organizations are communities of living, it's a living system, communities of peoples coming together around a purpose. So if each one of us could remember that, leaders could remember that, and not be in this in this zone of fearfulness, and that anything that they do which goes against the old paradigm leadership will doom their career or their their path to the top. Rather, it will create the space for the birth of a much healthier and healing organization that we need today.
Mm.
I really feel like we're coming back. So I've got a hashtag. I got my own one, not quite as fun as Tony's, but it's called "Change is an Inside Job." And I'm wondering, I'm really wondering, Sahana, and like, what is the because like, you spoke brilliantly, Toni, about trust, curiosity, vulnerability. Sahana, you're sharing, forgotten who they are as human beings. You know, we've all been there. I've been there. I still have my moments. We're all human. But there's definitely, I really feel like we're at this bridge, this liminal space between this old narrative and whatever, as you said, Sahana, what's emerging. But is it, and I'm curious, is it literally a complete disembodiment? That is the problem. People are so disembodied, they don't know how to feel. They don't allow themselves to, sit in a difficult situation or what they would perceive as discomfort? Like, is that the gateway somehow, getting people into that space?
Do you know, I when I think about this, I think about business leaders rather than just leaders per se, because there is this perception that leadership is about leading people. But if you don't know about business, where are you leading them? Up the garden path. So but you need, I'm sorry, it's a very English saying, but you need that business, that business mindset as well. And so if I can just kind of broaden it out and just tell you, I've got a definition of a compassionate organization. And that definition is a business that is considerate, that takes positive action for sustainable development, and has people at the core of its foundation. Is a business where the leaders, workforce, clients, and stakeholders, everybody, feels a part and they feel valued, working collaboratively with a focus on providing better outcomes for all. This is what you consider as a compassionate organization. So I have 4 P's, and those 4 P's are purpose, people, planet, and profit. And if it's a non-for-profit organization, then it's performance is that P. So when you think about your business and you use those 4 P's, you are moving in the right direction. And you start incorporating things like sustainable development, the goals that we need to meet by 2030, ESG, environmental, social, and governance agendas for future-proofing, for financial purposes. What does that mean? Corporate social responsibility. That means that it's bigger than the people in the organization. It's the wider communities and families and those extended parts as well. And you've got the DEIB as well, diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. So unless you start incorporating those 4, because if I was a leader out there now with all these different priorities, where do you go? So compassion pulls it all together in a space where it becomes more manageable and more focused.
Yeah.
Did you like my little speech, Gary?
Loved it.
But I just thought, let's just bring a little bit more to this discussion, because this is really about organizations. And then you've got the compassionate leadership piece as well, which is about the people orientated piece. The compassionate organization is really about what you as an organization need to be doing. What are your values? What is your mission, your vision? That has been more important now than it's ever been.
Yep.
And you have to start thinking about the planet. You have to start thinking about the purpose. And there's this piece that compassion and profit don't come into the mix together, but they can.
Yep.
So I'll rest my case there, Sahana.
I loved it. And as you explained the 4 P's, what was coming up for me is this, the ikigai-like Venn diagram of all of that, the intersection where the 4 P's meet, and organizations working at that intersection. And leaders not only leading with compassion, but also dealing with themselves with compassion.
Absolutely.
Because unless I have compassion and empathy for myself, I can't bring it outward. I can't, if I don't hold myself with ease and compassion and give myself that little, oh, it's okay, you made a mistake, so what? I can't do it with someone else. And so what you were saying was almost like an organization's ikigai. What would an organization say if their purpose, planet, profit, and people came together? And what would that intersection look like? What kind of work and services and products emerge from that organization whose ikigai is powerfully held space for, with leaders who understand that the organization itself is a living system, a community with its own ikigai.
That's right.
That's what came up when you were speaking, Toni. Thank you.
Good. Well, I'm glad that you interpreted it in this way, because that is exactly what it's about. And yes, people piece is important and should be at the forefront, but so should the planet and sustainability,
Yes. Yes.
and sustainable development goals. And how is your organization hanging on these pieces? Because if we're going to future proof business and look at the last few years around COVID, what came up? Some organizations didn't make it, some
Yeah.
did. And now you've got a really good opportunity to future proof your business by incorporating these elements.
It's
And then you're going to stand a chance.
it's so important, this conversation, because the thing I'll add in an extra bit of a layer to all of this is yes, totally agree, Tony, and I'm so pleased you're one of the few people that I've met so far, genuinely, that is not only wanting to, but actually actively seeking to bring that very intersectional business lens. Because we talk about intersectionality at a human DEI level, but we don't talk about it as a business level,
That's right.
as a system. And that's
I'm going to let you bring in another piece to it, only if it starts with a P, Gary. I'm joking.
No, I'm not. You know, got me on the spot. I'm like, what's the other P? No, purity. There you go, purity. There you go.
Well, there you go. Right,
Purity. So,
love it.
And just like purity of contribution is what I mean.
Yes.
Minimal ego, purity of contribution, purity of connection, pure expansiveness. Because this is not weak. This is not soft stuff. It's really, really hard from a point of view of doing the inner work. It's hard to go through that inner work, but if we allow ourselves to do it collectively in a system, we are going to make such different decisions in the future. We're going to make such different decisions.
Do you know, I love that word, purity. And Sahana, you can think of another word with P too to contribute to this discussion. But I was going to say that word purity, Gary, because I've been a public sector, civil servant. And one of the things that is embedded within me and a lot of us is the Nolan's principles. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but the Nolan's principles are about selflessness, transparency, openness, objectivity, integrity. So when you talk to purity, 3 or 4 of those components were wrapped up in that one word: openness, transparency, integrity.
Yep.
Do you see what I mean? And
it
drew me back to selflessness, this whole, it kind of incorporated so many areas in that one word.
I totally love that. And purity comes from a place of intent. Only when your intent is in alignment with your inner core and your action outside, we can call that an integrity and in purity. So yeah, I would totally add another to the Venn diagram.
Because it's about it's almost like undiluted.
Yeah.
That's, oh my God. One of the comments you made earlier, this is so important. So important. Like forgetting who you are as a human, you said, right, Sahana, earlier?
Yeah.
When you're coming from that place of purity, you're not, you know who you are. It warts and all. You own it. You're not embarrassed about it. You're not in shame. You're not in guilt, right? You're just you in that space from a pure, like you say, selfless connectedness, understanding, non-fear-based position, which is our nature, right? Yeah. That's not something we need to go and buy.
Absolutely. And I say that it's so much easier to be yourself if you're not trying. Because once you're trying, then you're not being yourself.
Yeah.
And there's one thing that we can all qualify to be without further work or study, and that is ourselves. So many times we forget that. We forget who we are. That's why I loved what you just said there about, who we are, and what Sahana said as well, because for me, what that's bringing up is about self-awareness. How many business leaders are self-aware?
Yeah. So underlying all of this is a profound awareness-based leadership. just to sort of.
I like that. I like that.
I like that.
And
Awareness-based leadership. I like that a lot.
thank you. Because without that, what we are doing is, like Gary said earlier, we are leading from the head, going with the constructs that were created by a handful of, killers in the past. Yes, Gary, step in.
White men, back to you.
Yep. And but when you lead from a place of awareness, coming from the place, you cannot not lead from inner source. And that again is so connected with purity, with power, with your profound understanding and compassion, and all the rest of it.
And
With all of
al-
that,
also, because the word resilient hasn't featured yet,
yes,
but resilient, and we think about how much a business leader is carrying,
yes,
carrying that heaviness of, I need to know everything, I
yeah,
need to do everything right, I need to make all the decisions because I can, not because I need to. When you think about all that heaviness,
yeah,
it's really it's really quite something, isn't it?
yep,
So there's that piece of, where are we at with our own self-awareness, and what is it that we actually need?
yeah,
And resilience, because resilience, you can actually burn out when you carry all this heaviness. Yeah. But
yeah,
resilience is a different type of thing. Resilience almost comes in with compassion, doesn't it?
yes, yes.
Are we doing a little bow on the top there, Toni McLelland? Is that a lovely little bow you just tied?
Well, I don't know. I'm just following Sahana's lead and, just sharing whatever's coming.
I'm just going to invite us to go to a check. This is incredible. I want to honour your time, Toni, because we know you've got something coming up, and also Sahana, it's getting later for you. What I'd love to invite us to do is just do a little 30-second, 1-minute checkout each as to what have you remembered in this exploration? What's something new that you're taking into your evening, morning, or afternoon? And again, if you've watched this live or watching it back, do share what's come up for you as well. So let's go, Sahana, Toni, myself, and then we'll all jump off. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you, Toni. What I'm really taking away powerfully from this is business has a great deal of power, very consciously using the word, to do a great deal of good. If businesses function at the intersection, like Toni said, of profit being an outcome, planet, people, and purity of intent, and if businesses can hold all of this together with compassionate leadership, leaders who are compassionate towards others and towards self, then we have a future of work and future organizations that are ready to lay the foundations for a shift, a profound shift, I would say, in the civilizational narrative that has been, kind of running the show so far, and which we know are not quite working anymore.
Wow. How do I come after that? That's really great. And I'm just going to kind of, summarize my piece by saying that if we really want to future proof our business, we need to really, as a foundation, set these foundations around corporate social responsibility, DEIB, ESG, SDG. These are things that are set in place. And if they are the foundation of your business, with compassion and the 4 Ps, purpose, people, planet, and profit, or performance, depending on the status of your organization, then you can flow. It becomes so much easier. The effort, the amount you put in is less because you set a solid foundation moving forwards, and you can flow.
Muted. I would love to add to both of your beautiful shares. To be honest, what's come up so crystal clear, and it's really good timing after the week I've had so far in a really good way, is I would add to foundation, creating the conditions. So I think we're speaking to similar but different things at the same time, which is how intentional are we around ensuring that we allow ourselves to slow down, to see one another as the human beings that we all are, and then co-create what the future looks like within our particular context. Because the more we do that, as you say, the easier it is, and the more we can then consciously align with nature's systems instead of using her as from purely an extractive means.
Yeah.
We can't see nature as anything but extractive if we're so busy up here reacting to our ego and our fears. So I'm just so excited about awareness-based leadership, Sahana. I'm loving your 4 Ps, Toni. And if you out there have not enjoyed this, that's okay. Let's have a chat and we'll play it back again at some time, because this is just gold dust, you two. This is absolute gold dust. You can follow me below as well. And I just want to say, Toni, thank you. You are a gem. You're a light. Same for you, Sahana. And I just want to wish everyone a fantastic morning, afternoon, evening, and of course, a so-called weekend. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Toni. Thank you, Gary.
Cheers.